Hello and welcome to IndieSider number 47 for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2016. I'm your host, Ken Gagney, and this week we're playing Chime Sharp. Show notes can be found at IndieSider.net/ChimeSharp. Full disclosure, I backed this game on both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. That's how I got the review code. This is a puzzle game that is a sequel to a 2010 game that originally released for Xbox 360 and later for Windows and PS3 called Chime. Chime Sharp is available on Steam for Mac, Windows, and Linux. Now let's see what we got here. This is a puzzle game where you are placing pentominos on an open grid in order to complete quads, that is, squares or rectangles. So here it is, and there is a soundtrack playing in the background, as you can hear. I'm going to put that there, and let's see. And every time you form a quad that is at least 3 by 3, you see it start to fill up, and you have that much time to add to it and make it longer or wider. Let's see, put that there, that there. Let's see, can't put anything there. Nope, that won't fit. Nope. And now the beat line that is swiping across the screen, as it touches these cleared quads, it erases them and makes musical tones that become part of the soundtrack. So you are affecting the game's soundtrack just by way of your playing. Now you will notice that there are some leftover bits and bobs from some of the quads I've made, because not all the pieces fit perfectly. Those become leftover pieces that I need to use, or else that beat line will wipe them away and cause me to lose my multiplier. So there is an incentive to use up every piece you're putting down. Now you'll notice that when they get swiped away from the screen by the beat line, it leaves sort of a colored background that's different from the rest of the level. The goal is to get 100% of the level covered in that different color by making quads across the entire level. There's a timer in the upper right, as you can see, that is counting down, and that time can be extended through proper play of the game. But it is a race against time. There is a mode of this game that has no time limit, but I prefer this mode. I'm playing with the keyboard right now and the mouse, my trackpad on my MacBook Pro. I have also played it with my PS4 controller and found that to be a very satisfying experience. I do not recommend playing with just the keyboard. I found that to be disruptive. Now see, I lost my multiplier because I didn't use up all the leftover pieces before the beat line made it to them. I am trying to make this piece a little bit bigger though, and I know I've already made some quads in that section of the level, so I'm not getting a lot of points for doing that, but I just like making quads. The game does recommend using up, making quads in the corners first, because those can be hard to make, so better to do it while the level is still relatively empty. I don't have a lot of strategy to this game, I just like putting things in their places and making shapes. Similarly with Tetris, I enjoy that game, but never claimed to be any good at it. Let's see, like that. And then that. Oops, not like that. There we go. And like that. Oh, I'm gonna need another long piece for that one. And there it is. Perfect. Hey, how about that? Uh-oh, almost out of time. Might get a time extension. Let's see how I do here. Let's see. Perfect. Nope, no time extension. So that was the first level of this game. This game was designed by Ste Curran. He outsourced some of the development to Twist Play, entirely under his direction. The game was published by Chilled Mouse, and the original Chime was published by Zoe Mode. So a lot of different parties were at play in making this game. Every level has a different set of pentominos and a different soundtrack. So I'm going to start another level while I interview Mr. Ste Curran. If you want to hear just the audio version of the interview, you can check it out at IndieSider.net, where you can find links to iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and the Google Play Store. You can download the audio edition of IndieSider at any of those. Thanks for listening. Today I'm speaking with Ste Curran, the designer of Chime Sharp. Hello, Ste.
Hello.
How are you today?
Great. It's really good to be talking to you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yes, it must be a relief to finally have the game released. At the time of this recording, it just came out a week ago. At the time of the airing, 2 weeks ago. How does it feel?
That's true. I mean, it is a relief. I've had a really, really great time over the last week sort of reading people's feedback, although release these days as a concept is kind of strange, given we've been in early access for about 4 or 5 months, I think, and consequently, development doesn't stop these days. You wait to see whether you've got any life-shattering bugs and then spend the next little while patching them. But it is nice to pass that milestone.
Yeah, given that the game has been available in some form for several months, how do you know when it's ready to leave early access?
Well, we made a pretty clear decision that was going to be when I was happy with the game modes that we had in, because we had, the contents of the game was very much in flux and we were trying new things with it. I wanted to make sure it was as robust as possible. That doesn't mean it was absolutely 100% stable, because we're a small development team and we can't test on every single format. But for us, we had, 0 crash bugs, so that was important. And I was very, very happy with the core game modes inside Chime Sharp, which are effectively the original Chime revamped and distilled for this version, and a new mode called Sharp mode.
Now, the Steam description for Chime Sharp says that this is the original Chime with the rusty edges filed away. What would you call the rusty edges in the original game that this game finally gave you the opportunity to rework?
It's funny. This is the first game I've put out on Steam myself, and so I'm only now getting used to the back end and all of the features of Steam. I mean, I'm a long-time Steam gamer, but it's different when you're viewing this through the lens of development. And I was only looking at that description today and I was thinking, really? Did I write that? That doesn't seem right. I'm not sure that's the sort of thing I wrote. Rusty doesn't seem like a sort of word I would use, and I think rusty is the wrong word. But there were obtuse parts of the original Chime that, I developed 6 years ago that on release and in that sort of period after release, I wasn't particularly pleased with. I love the game, right? I've always loved Chime, and Chime remains, of all the things that I've worked on, the single game that I play myself the most. I find it super relaxing and just genuinely a warm experience. But at the same time, there were things I wasn't happy with. I can go through those things if you want.
Yes, let's hear it.
Okay. So my biggest major issue with Chime is that Chime's many things to different people. I was talking to one of our, best hardcore players last night who really canes the thing for score attack and, is frantically clicking their way through each level, trying to arrange these blocks as quickly as possible. But other players play it in a very, very different way, a relaxed experience. And that was the standout thing, I think, for the last generation of Chime, for me at least, was that it was an ambient experience. It was a game that had an objective and it would test you, but it was somehow really, really relaxing and pleasant to play. But in opposition to that, you have this timer, which is constantly counting down and putting pressure on you. A lot of the game is sort of time-based. The quads fill up according to a timer. There's a timer at the top of the screen telling you have to play soon. There's a timer that runs out. There's time that comes out with 10 seconds to go. It counts in the middle. I always found that to be in conflict with this, relaxing, what I viewed as a relaxing heart to the game. So that was one of my big tasks this time around. I wanted to resolve that, and I think we have with this new mode called Sharp mode, which removes all the timers. But in addition, there are other things. I think the original Chime has a very rigid structure and a very poor end game. You have to cover 100% of every grid, and from 0% to about 90%, you see players taking lots and lots of different paths there, employing different tactics. But then that last 10% becomes a grind, because you have to cover every cell in the grid. And finding those, that's easy because you can uncover with a single key press. But actually accessing them, you may have blocked yourself in, requires sometimes waiting a few loops, chiseling away. You can avoid that by planning ahead, but that's no fun to some players. So this time round, we actually say that the game completes, each level completes, each song completes at 90%. But at that point, you have another 2 cycles of the beatline to try and get up to 100%. So with careful planning, you can score 100% and get a lot of coverage because of that, more points bonuses. But players who don't want to do that sort of chiseling away, the uncovering, the fastidious method of really painting the thing, they can move on to the next board as well. So I think it gives more options. It's a much more flexible way of playing. And there are other things as well. There are small bugs. There's some refined scoring. I think we place more weight on getting perfect quads, not leaving fragments behind. And I'm just getting messages right now, if you can hear the bleeps in the background, some bug reports. I'll close those.
More bugs, so the game is still in development?
Those are not critical bugs. I can actually hold on a second. I've actually closed the window, so I can't tell you what it is. But yeah, we're it's interesting hearing feedback from players right now. One of the tasks of the designer is to distinguish between this is a critical bug and this is not playing how I imagined it would play. And we've had very, very few of the latter. I mean, I think I've been lucky to an extent, and that the balance of the game has worked out. It's very, very hard to see the balance of the game from within it, especially when you've been working on this project for 18 months, like I have, and with a small team, as I say. So when you put it out there, suddenly you've got 1,000 new players, and they're all playing in a different way. And luckily, I think most of the balance is correct. What wasn't correct on release was the unlocking structure. The one thing that I did get wrong on release is that because I've been playing it for such a long time, it's very, very hard to gauge the difficulty. And I had levels locked. I had the unlocking structure, which I wasn't sure about in the first place, but we put in because we found in early access people wanted an unlocking metagame in there. And I set those unlocks much too high because I'd set them according to my ability, still minus a bit, but not enough. So the patch and the bulk of sort of messages I'm getting, and indeed the one we just got right then, was for someone asking if the unlocking had been fixed, which it has now.
So in addition to the opportunity to refine the gameplay, of course, you also were able to choose an entirely new soundtrack for this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was super, super important to me as well. The two things, when I was approached and asked if I wanted to direct a sequel to the game, the two things I made clear from the start were that I would do this, but I wanted absolute control over the gameplay features and the design of the game, which isn't to say the other team members, the coders, Connor, Sian and Lana, the producer, have had some input. They absolutely have, and so has Ian, who approached me in the first place. They've all had input to the design, but it was under my control. And the other thing was the soundtrack, which I wanted to make sure I could request songs, that I wanted to be in there, and veto songs that I didn't want to be there. And that's been great. I've approached some of my favourite artists, and they've all been really, really super helpful. And I think we've got a really, really wide palette in there of audio. Like, there's lots and lots of different sorts of music. There's still scope for more if we get a chance to do DLC. We've got lots of different genres, and I hope the soundtrack will introduce people to types of music they wouldn't normally listen to, and maybe encourage them to explore that.
So how do you choose which types of music to include? For example, I wouldn't expect to boot up Chime Sharp and hear polka.
There are a couple of guidelines. We know that lyrical music with lyrics doesn't work brilliantly unless you treat those lyrics first. We experimented that in the first Chime on PC when we did Jonathan Coulton's Still Alive. And to my mind, that didn't really work because the vocal samples are so distinctive that they loop and they quickly become annoying. So when you're treating vocals, you have to really, really be clever about it. And I think we've done that with the Mote of Dust remix in this new game. I think it sounds absolutely beautiful. The Message to Bear song also has vocals in it. It's very, really strong. And Churches, of course, as well, have vocals. With respect to like poker, there's no reason why not. And I'm completely open to that. But we have 15 tracks to play with, right? So we tend to choose things. We have to limit to some extent because there are more genres in the world than 15, and that limiting factor has been my taste. If you have a poker song you want in there, please let me know.
I'll get Weird Al on the phone right away.
Absolutely. Well, that certainly fits in with my karaoke sideline.
So are these tunes repurposed or are they original for Chime Sharp?
It varies. I mean, we worked closely with several artists to produce versions of tracks that they'd already done. Some are completely new, and they'll take on and publish on their albums. Some are licensed. For example, the wonderful Steve Reich track that starts the game and I think sets the tone for the game. That's a licensed piece of music which has had a brilliant treatment by Tom Rowland, who's been the audio producer on the game. It's his first game, but he's made a hell of a difference.
Is it possible to purchase the soundtrack separately?
I don't think it's possible to purchase it as an album. All of the tracks, most of the tracks, I think, if not all of them, are available on Spotify and probably iTunes as well. There is an album that we're producing, but that's exclusively for Kickstarter backers. I don't think currently we have a plan to sell that separately.
Speaking of Kickstarter, you ran 2 crowdfunding campaigns for this game, one on Kickstarter, one on Indiegogo. Is that correct?
We did, yes.
So why did you choose to run 2 campaigns instead of one, or use 2 platforms instead of one?
You know, that decision is somewhat lost in the mist of time. So I can't be certain of the answer to that. I know that I was very, very nervous about doing a Kickstarter because I've seen big failures on Kickstarter for video games, and Chime is very precious to me, and so is my reputation. I've done a Kickstarter before for a card game, and that went really, really well, but I know how much hard work it can be. So I was very, very clear at the start. For the goals for Kickstarter were very achievable. The goals were clear. Listen, I'm going to try all of these things. They might not work, but what I want to do is Chime, the original Chime, but better with more levels. And I think we've done that. Like, it is a sharper version of Chime, and I think we've exceeded that. You know, we've got several different game modes in. It's a much bigger game than we promised, so that's great. We did the Indiegogo campaign, I think, because we weren't sure whether there was a different audience on Indiegogo, and also because we were toying with the idea of doing a thing called Chime Flat, which was a sort of separate version of the game, distilled and only with chiptune music on. We thought that might be a quite, neat way of treating Chime. The Indiegogo didn't get funded, but the Kickstarter did, and so, that's where we are.
So does that mean we won't be seeing a Chime Flat?
Everything depends on sales at this point, right? Like, if Chime suddenly goes supernova and there's a thirst for different versions of Chime, then there are so many options. I'd love to put it on console. I'd love to put it on tablet. I think it's a natural tablet game. In some respects, there are some design choices we'll have to make and some things we'll have to change. And yeah, Chime Flat is something we'd love to do as well. We're talking right now. I'm talking to the publisher. We do have some plans, but I can't talk about them right now. The plans that I've just noted, the ones that I've just mentioned, they all depend on us getting a significant number of sales.
Because I would love to see this game on console. It was on the Xbox 360 that I discovered the original Chime, and Chime, the original, is on Steam, but for Windows only, which wouldn't work on my Mac. So knowing that Chime Sharp could appear on consoles for other people to discover is very encouraging.
I would love it to be on consoles, and honestly, that's where I play most of my games, on the living room. Now, over the last 6 months, something's actually changed, which is that I've got myself a Steam machine, and so I am now playing Chime Sharp on my TV. But that's a very selfish way of looking at this, and yeah, I would absolutely love to get it on consoles, but we can't commit to that at the moment until we know there's a hunger there. And right now, we're just trying to get word out about this version of the game because I'm super proud of it.
You said you were originally approached to do the sequel by Ian. Does that mean that the sequel wasn't your idea to begin with?
I've always wanted to make a sequel to Chime because the original, like I said, had these rough edges that I wanted to attack, and it's that sort of nagging thing in the back of your head. But I'm a freelance designer. I do a lot of different things, and I'm working on many games at the same time. I've got another game out next week called Pixelgrams, which is a block puzzle thing for iOS and Android, and I'm working on a cricket game as well, a VR cricket game in my spare time. So I'm always working on lots and lots of different projects. Chime was always in the back of my head as something that, I loved so much, but the truth is I didn't think I would get an opportunity because the rights to Chime lie with a different company. And it was Ian who did the negotiations to license Chime from Zoe Mode, which is a company that I used to work where I developed Chime. And it was him who approached me. So it's he was the spark that lit this fire. It's all down to him.
And does he work with Chilled Mouse?
He is Chilled Mouse, yeah. Him and Jonathan Newth are Chilled Mouse. And Lana, who's the producer there, who, I mean, without Lana's work, this game would not exist. She's been phenomenal throughout.
Wonderful. So for those who have followed your accomplishments as a result of Chime, Chime appeared in 2009, Chime Sharp appeared in 2016. It sounds like you've been very busy in those 7 years, but those might not have been on people's radars. It sounds like you've worked on many other games in that time.
I do a lot of different things. I've worked on games in that time, and some of them I've enjoyed, and some of them I've not enjoyed, and all of those experiences have changed my life. But I don't just make games. I do a lot of teaching as well. I teach at South Bank University in London, and around the world I do lectures. I do sort of keynotes at conferences, which are a bit weird, and monologues. I have my radio show, I have my karaoke spin-off, and all these other little games that I'm working on as well. So yeah, I keep myself busy.
And you also do some consulting with Lee Alexander?
And consulting, of course, but that's not quite as magical to talk about. Lee and I go in and we talk to game developers about the games they're making. We try and give them an external perspective through our company, which is called Agency. And yeah, that's super fun as well. Lee is absolutely wonderful, and I love working with her. But that's not that's not the stuff that people like you usually want to talk to me about.
Most people know Lee through her journalism. I wasn't aware she even did consulting until I looked up your website last night.
Ah, right, yeah. I mean, she's a busy and incredibly intelligent, capable woman, and she does a lot of different things. She's a fearsome person, and I am very lucky to work with her.
And you also have a couple of podcasts, including the One Life Left radio show?
Yeah, it's definitely a radio show, not a podcast. That's our snobby view. We're like, we're a radio show. It's very hard to get a radio. But we're also a podcast, and we get a lot of listeners through that. Because, as you well know, podcasts and video games go perfectly together. We've been doing One Life Left, Simon, Byron, and Anne Scantlebury and me for 10 years now, which means we're the longest running video game radio show in the world, which is a pretty big thing, right? That's a thing. And it's a very light, accessible video game radio show. We do it for this brilliant station in London called Resonance 104.4 FM. And then it's podcast. We do that every Monday, and it's podcast every Wednesday, although we're actually on summer break for the next 4 weeks. So we do that, and it's the most fun thing I do every week. I absolutely... I love it. Even on the days where game development grind is getting me down, turn up, I chat to two of my friends about video games and stupid other things like this, like the karaoke thing. And yeah, we have a great time. So yeah, I can understand why you do a podcast.
And what's the link for the One Life Left radio show?
It's onelifeleft.com.
Easy.
Yes, easy to remember.
And also, you've mentioned this several times, the karaoke, but the explanation actually came when we were talking off the record. Can you go on the record and tell us what exactly is karaoke?
The reason I'm mentioning it quite a lot is because before we started this brilliant conversation, and as soon as we hang up, I will go back to doing this karaoke thing. Karaoke is... it was an idea of Simon's, who's my radio show co-presenter, and we do it as the radio show, but it's sort of spun off into its own thing now, which is pop songs rewritten to be about video games. So if you imagine Prince's Purple Rain to be written about heavy rain, or like Lady Gaga's Poker Face to be about Pokédex, as in the Pokemon concept. And it sounds dreadful, right? It sounds terrible. It's actually absolutely the best thing that I do. It makes people ludicrously happy because it's dumb jokes and singing along to pop music for a few hours. And we get booked around the world to do it. We have a residency at a bar in London. We do it every month here. But tonight, just because I finished Chime last week, and I really, video games take a long time to make. This took 18 months for me to produce. And I think it's also really nice to do short, sharp, creative projects. So I got in touch with some of the people who helped me write the songs for karaoke, and I was like, right, next week let's do a pop-up gig about Pokemon Go, where we just turn up and we sing 20 songs about Pokemon Go. And they were like, yeah, let's do that. And so that happens tonight. And I'm in the last throes of quick songwriting and transcribing into our slightly weird karaoke software. as soon as I'm finished with this, I'm heading off there.
Well, I can honestly say I've never spoken to anybody with a set of interests quite like yours.
I haven't even talked to you about cricket yet.
Oh goodness, that can be a separate podcast. I do want to ask though, I am a big fan of Chime from the Xbox 360. I'm delighted to see Chime Sharp come out. But the reason I read all your Kickstarter and Indiegogo updates and follow you on Twitter is because you have a sense of humor unlike anything I've seen in the video game development industry.
Is that good or bad?
Well, it made me want to read every update, not necessarily to see what you had to say, but to see how you were going to say it.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you. I used to be a writer. I still am sometimes, although mostly for me these days, and mostly for karaoke songs. I really, really enjoy writing, and I enjoy talking to people as well, a lot. There is actually some of my writing buried inside Chime Sharp, but I think very few people have discovered it yet. If you complete every song, you will find a history of Chime buried in the extras. And there are also the Steam trading cards, which have block biographies. Now, those are unlockable in the game as well by achieving 100% on levels, which is a very, very hard thing to do. But if you do that, you will get these silly little block biographies, which are very in keeping with the tone of the Kickstarter updates that I have written for the last while.
That is the best incentive I've found yet to finish the game.
Thanks. It's also a good game as well. Let's not forget that.
Of course not. But while you are going to do my karaoke, I'm going to go finish Chime Sharp because now I want to read those biographies.
Fantastic.
So remind our listeners where they can find you and your game online.
Okay, well, my name is Ste, S-T-E Curran, C-U-R-R-A-N, and my website, which has a portfolio of my talks and has some of the things that I've done, although I don't think Chime's on there at the moment. I should update that. That's at www.stecurran.com. You can find One Life Left at onelifeleft.com. Karaoke is at singkaraoke.com. There's some examples of the songs on there. And Chime is chimegame.com. You can find it there, or you can go on Steam and search for Chime. And I spend a lot of time hanging out on the Chime forums at the moment, so you can find me there, or even join the Chime chat room, where so far we've had a maximum of 3 people. It's very cozy.
Ooh, let's see if we can get it up to 4.
Someday, I dream.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Steve. Links to all the resources you mentioned will be found in the show notes, which are at IndieSider.net/ChimeSharp. Great game. As I may or may not have mentioned, I was also a backer for the Kickstarter and the Indiegogo, and I am very happy with the results.
Thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you.
Great talking to you too. Thanks for your time.